Welcome to another edition of the podcast known as Blending the Family. I'm your host, Tommy Maloney, coming to you from Memphis, Tennessee. I love Tennessee. I miss living in Tennessee. Anybody in Tennessee right now, you should be blessed. Or let me rephrase that. You are blessed that you live in Tennessee. If this is your first time listening, hey, thanks for coming by. Thanks for listening. My guest on this week's episode of the podcast, Suzy Miller. Suzy Miller has a YouTube channel called Divorce TV, the Divorce TV show. I was a guest on her show, and I wanted to reciprocate and have her come on the podcast. Luckily for her, she didn't have to see my ugly mug on the podcast because I don't record video. I only record audio. For those of you who might know this. Whew, how are you doing? I don't have my water. Gosh darn it, I want my water. Anyway, I'll figure it out later. It has been a long, long day. Had the silent partner all day today. And then I had some meetings going on that had nothing to do with the silent partner. And excited about some possibilities. Hopefully, some side projects, some side projects, maybe some other ways to create some product lines. And then just got done with my group coaching meeting with my man, Mr. Glenn P. Brooks. If you are an entrepreneur and you're looking to start a business or need some help creating systems, Glenn P. Brooks is the man for you. He and his wife Cherie have really created a fantastic business. So anyway, before I forget, because I'm already forgetting, don't forget the new book coming out in September, My Dad's Advice at 5:04 a.m. Head over to the link in the show notes to purchase your copy of the book. Again, coming out in September, My Dad's Advice at 5:04 a.m. Or you can also go to mydadsadvicebook.com, mydadsadvicebook.com, and purchase the book right then and there. It's been a really, I'm not going to lie to you, it's been a really crappy week. I mean, a crappy week. But I'm excited to share with you Suzy Miller on this podcast. What a great lady, doing some wonderful things. And, one of the things I loved about, I love about interviewing, let me rephrase that, having conversations, I should say, with all these guests is learning something new about them. And Suzy is a script writer. And so you'll hear us talk about that. Her motto, which is really an oxymoron, but it's beautiful. Peace is my weapon of choice, is how she says it. She, too, is also a TEDx speaker. Check her out. Check her out on YouTube at Divorce TV Show, Suzy Miller. Trying to think, what else is going on? I am... mentioned I'm here in Memphis. One of the things that I've discovered this week, I had a physical the previous week and didn't get good news. So have to do some changes here. Have to really change up the diet. Have to work on the exercise better. I've been doing my best to get in. My goal is to at least get 12,000 steps in a day. Not 10, but 12. And so I didn't do it today I did. I got what I was going to say. I didn't hit the gym today, but I did get my 12,505 steps in today. What I have yesterday. Yesterday was 16,649. And then on Tuesday, when I found out the news, 13,041. And I have become a rabbit because all I've been doing this whole week is eating salads. And going to refocus, or let me rephrase that, or focus on my health. And it was a wake up call, and my wife said, "Wow, you had to hear from the physician's assistant after my mom, my wife, my dad, my dad's girlfriend. I'm sure my son has mentioned it too." So, yeah, a little stressful. That hey, I mean, if you get news from the doctor, there are ways to correct it, or I should say, I'm not a doctor. What do I know? I'm just some fucking idiot. Sorry for the language, but the mindset of the medical world drives me nuts. Is that if you have some kind of issue, what do they want to do? Put you on some kind of medication, and that's what the physician's assistant saying, we can put you on this. And I'm like, no, I know what I need to do. I need to exercise. I know I need to eat better. And it's hard when you travel 100% of the time, Monday through Friday. Just have to be more conscious of what I'm doing, what I'm eating, making sure that I've gone all in. Drinking a lot of water, which I know helps. I know that keeping track, that's one of the things I do. I keep track on my phone. I'm grabbing my phone right now. Which app is it? It's just called Lose It. The app, Lose It. That's all I do, is going back to keeping track of what I eat. And then I take a look at, let's see if I can go back, log, there we go. And I look at my macronutrients. So today, I'm not too happy, but I had 54% fat, 19% carbs. The doctor wants me to keep it under 20 for carbs, and protein was 27%. I want that protein higher, and I want the fat lower, and carbs, like I said, under 20. So there we go. Anyway, let's get into it. Suzy Miller is our guest this week, and you can find Suzy on LinkedIn. Suzy Miller on LinkedIn. You can find her on the social anywhere, Instagram, YouTube especially, with her divorce TV show. So anyway, that's it. That's all I got. And as our man, the myth, the legend, one day he's going to come on this show. Oh, I know it. I feel it. Oh, crap. Before I say that, please help support me. Help with my book launch. My Dad's Advice at 5:04 a.m. is my new book, my third book. Please go to the website, mydadsadvicebook.com, mydadsadvicebook.com, and pre-order. And then hopefully by September, October, you will have your copy of the book. Anyway, as Terry Crews would say, your success is my success. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for downloading. Take care and stay healthy. You don't want to be a fat ass like me. Suzy, my first question to you is, and I've been thinking about this as I was making, I was at a Toastmaster Zoom meeting, and somebody talked a lot about turmeric, and so I have a concoction that's hot water, honey, lemon, and turmeric. And as I was making my concoction, I was thinking about all the things in your space that you've done. And I started thinking, what was Suzy Miller like as a young girl? And I started picturing you as from the cartoon Peanuts, Lucy, where Lucy would be at this on the sidewalk with her psychiatry little stand. And I'm thinking Suzy Miller had a little, like a lemonade stand, but set up as a divorce mediator. That's my first thought of you, Suzy. So what did Suzy want to be when she grew up?
I I was not a good mediator at all at those days. I was very more of I wouldn't say totally selfish, but fairly self-interested, like most young people. And I only came to be who I am now through, as is so often the case with most of us, adversity has been my best teacher. So I loved horses. I worked with horses. One of my early experiences was working with an Arab, and they like to be in charge, and learning that you can't bully them and that bullying doesn't work as a technique. It's just not effective. And I remember that as a teenager thinking, wow, that's interesting, because I literally wasn't clear on that up to that point. So it was, and that was, I always stayed with me. And that definitely feeds through to now. So we're working with clients, we might use a lot of strategy. We might, some might call it manipulation, but I prefer to call it just thinking strategically in ways that is ultimately going to benefit everybody. But the minute you start going into battle, into war, into manipulation, you lose. That's been my experience throughout life, and I've embraced it with what I do now in helping other people to see that is definitely the case when you're getting divorced.
Is that where the peace is my weapon of choice motto came from?
Yes, and I had quite an interesting reaction to that when I first it first came to me, as people found it upsetting because I was relating peace to weapons, and as if that, apparently peace is supposed to be this fluffy thing that sits in the corner and doesn't cause any trouble. My experience of peace and particularly through co-parenting experiences, it's all about boundaries and clarity about what you want and being focused, and but where your interest is what is ultimately the benefit for all, rather than just some short-term gain for yourself. But yeah, no, peace is my weapon of choice is how I end my divorce TV show each time, because I think it's important people see that being peaceful is something to be proud of. It's something that takes courage and vision and determination. It's not fluffy.
Yeah, I was in that camp too, going, peace is my weapon of choice. It's a very yin and yang motto.
And also, it plays off the fact the bit that goes before it is in the war of divorce, because when someone has announced a war on you and you're on the family because they've chosen a toxic route through the process or been encouraged to go that route, laying down yourself on the ground to be trodden over is not actually a good tactic at all. You do need to be a bit more canny, and so it is. You need strength and courage. You're not going to make. There's turn the other cheek, but there's also get out of the way first. So, and come back with a better solution for everybody. So it's I think in my experience, that's what peace is not a fluffy thing. It's about courage and perseverance, and it's really important that I think it's detrimental that people see it as this some kind of fluffy thing. But my divorce, that wouldn't work. I get that all the time. He or she was a narcissist, and my attitude is but you've got to co-parent with them for the next 10, 20 years. So you need a plan, and you're not going to do it by putting yourself behind a wall and being blameless. It's, I guess, ultimately, and I'm sure you've had this experience too, it's about taking responsibility, and that's what is the kickstart for changing the circumstances around yourself. And yeah, taking that responsibility isn't easy. That's certainly not fluffy.
Well, I will be, and I'm always very transparent with anybody I speak to about, divorce and co-parenting and mental health. And, for me, Susie, I did not listen to my inner circle. And I hate to say it, but it was a regret. And I'm not a fan of regrets, but we all have regrets. So, what I encountered with going through my first divorce and last. I'm going on the record, Suzy. I don't want to go through that again. And I know my wife now, she doesn't want to go through it either. So, um, I did not seek any type of counsel. I didn't go through any type of mediation because I just wanted it, essentially, Susie, I just wanted it done. And
Mhm.
not only did I not protect my son in the within the parenting agreement, but I did not protect myself. And what I mean by that is after, my gosh, maybe 2 years after the divorce, we ended up in court because my former spouse wanted to move out of state with our son.
Mm.
And so, if I had really listened to my inner circle, I wouldn't have been in that situation. And part of that situation, Susie, was uh, I didn't have a lot of money on a credit card, so I maxed out that credit card. Had to borrow money from now my wife and family members to get through all that legal mumbo jumbo stuff. And so
Yeah.
I firmly believe in the power of what you do and what other mediators do, because you you do have to put some of the humanality into it in the big picture versus it just being a sit down business meeting. Because for me, if I had really gone through the parenting agreement, Susie, I would have been better off. And,
Mm.
some of the things that in that agreement would have benefited my son. So, with with all of that, I firmly wish I could go jump in a time machine and go, we're gonna bring some mediation and we're gonna figure this out together.
But yeah, and just to be transparent, I'm not a mediator. What I do is I promote mediation probably more than most mediators do. I can honestly say I think I believe in mediation more than some mediators do. What I am is a divorce strategist. I'm like an architect. So I know all the different elements, how they fit together, and in plain language, how to save $25,000 plus on legal fees that you shouldn't really need to spend, because the legal part of divorce should be very, very small, unless people want to go and fight it out in court and go to war, in which case then it can be very, very large. But a lot of it is administration. It's cutting a deal on the finances, which is where the mediation is so powerful, because it's not a good thing to try and do over the kitchen table on your own. But most of all, a lot of what I'm doing through my online workshops and one-to-one work is I'm I'm giving people a boot camp for dispute resolution.
Mm.
I don't call it that. I call it things like the divorce financial workshop or divorcing a difficult spouse workshop, because people aren't that interested in dispute resolution when they're in frightened and worried about divorce. But in order for that to work well, and I observed this through putting on the first ever UK divorce fairs and live events, and on my journey, I noticed that there's all these wonderful tools like mediation and collaborative law. And yet, if you don't go in there well tooled up and how to use them, if you don't do your homework, you don't prepare, of course, it's not going to work very well. And so a lot of the work I'm doing is very logical things like saying, right, you're going to sort the finances out. Have you actually spoken to a financial expert who does long-term cash flow forecasting and can work out whether the way you want to split this is going to work? Because there's no point you getting the house if you can't afford to keep it. And 99% of the time they go, no, we've just spoken to the lawyer.
Yeah, and some things I started thinking about um, doing some research on your LinkedIn is I feel that the way society is right now. Matter of fact, I overheard a conversation with a lady last week, simply saying, "Well, if this marriage doesn't work out, no big deal. I'll just go back on whichever app that she wanted to use." And it was very upsetting because she was already giving up on a marriage. And
Mm.
my thought was, all right, what can you do, meaning her, what can you do to help? I don't know. The only thing that comes to my mind right now, Susie, is like baby proof your marriage. You know,
Mhm.
you know, I don't want to get into the mindset of, well, when we get married, we're going to have to, in essence, divorce proof our marriage, making sure that when the time comes that we've figured out that we don't really want to be together, we've already established that, versus having the mindset for better or for worse, because it is so easy. So in the state I live in here in the United States, in Colorado, you're
Mm.
divorced 90 days. It only takes 90 days to be officially
Wow.
divorced. And that's just, to me, insane, because it's such a rush in the
Mm.
process that, I don't know, I mean, yeah, my parents got divorced, but maybe I'm a little bit old fashioned, Susie. And what happened? Because it is so easy in majority of the states to get divorced. I mean, I don't know what it's like in the UK, but it just seems that people don't put the effort in to save marriages. I guess I was on a soapbox.
I have a couple of things I'd like to say about that. One is I refute the word easy to get divorced. Yeah, if they just two single people got together, got married, then they get divorced. Simple. They spent 10 years together, they've raised children. It's never, ever simple to get divorced. It's not just about the finances, there's the emotion. It's a huge thing. And the idea that people just throw their marriage away is a media myth. It's just not true. For the majority of people, it's a long, painful decision. And the last thing they need is someone telling them or making them feel bad about it. I mean, that's not helping them to take responsibility and do it the right way. If you make people feel bad, make them feel guilty, they're much more likely to go into blame mode and start going, well, it's not my fault, it's because he's a narcissist, or she's crazy, I can't live with her. And society and often the friends encourage that kind of reaction, and I think this is a huge problem. And I would question that phraseology, easy divorce. Yeah, technically the admin can be done quickly in Colorado, but the admin isn't the issue. It's how do you work out how you're going to split a financial life up, and make sure you've got provision for the children, and that everyone's going to have enough to eat and a roof over their head. So that's the process that people get often angry with and end up in court and battling. They're not battling around the divorce. They're just not able to cut a deal with each other financially. And that is lack of communication, that's fear, and that's not sitting down and actually working the sums out properly. It becomes an ego rule about, I'm going to get 60%, not 40%, and not, let's look at our needs, let's do the sums and work with financial experts who are a lot cheaper than lawyers, to go through and see that we're going to be okay here. We can keep this family, which currently is feeling a bit like a broken family, but it's going to become a healthy, operational, extended family where we don't have to run to each other for money and support all the time, because we've actually planned it out properly in the first place. So I see that as just being grown up, sensible parents. And the other thing I just wanted to pick up on what you said was, there's in a way, it's a sort of a third option, in that you're not, with a marriage, you don't divorce proof a marriage. We come together, magic happens. We have no control over that person we love. May have a nervous breakdown. They may end up having an addiction. That's very common. We might not even know about it at this time. And trying to keep a marriage together through someone else's addiction is often near impossible. So this stuff can happen. So what we'll do is we'll have a will in case one of us dies. Perfectly rational thing to do. You're probably about 7 times more likely to leave the relationship alive than dead. So think about that. Why is it not logical to think about, well, what happens if one of us leaves? And my advice to people is, I even got a livingtogetheragreement.com free template that people can download. Create a life plan, a joyous plan Work with a life coach and a financial planner. That's a good combo. Look at when you're going to retire. Where do you want to retire together? Have those, how many children are you going to have? Have those conversations, preferably before you get married, but certainly soon after, because you'd be amazed how many people don't talk about that stuff.
That
And
is
get
such a
clear.
great point, Suzy.
Yeah. Get clear on what you want. Put it down in a life plan, a beautiful vision. And in there's two little extras. One is, what if one of us dies? Well, that's the will. And what if one of us leaves? This is how we'll split things up. This is how we will co-parent. And you've had the conversation. And that means that should anything happen, it's very much harder to be inveigled into a toxic family law system. You're much better positioned to go, well, we talked about this. And you have to update it. So every couple of years, especially if you have children, keep it up to date, just like you should your will. And people say, well, that's so unromantic, but I don't think it's romantic fighting over the spoils of the property and the assets when you're getting divorced. It's just being sensible, like having a will. But actually, interestingly, through having those kind of conversations early on in your marriage or even before the marriage, wouldn't it be wonderful to not be frightened to talk about money with the person you want to spend the rest of your life with? And I'm particularly talking to the ladies here, because a lot of them, we're made to feel that it's unromantic and not the right thing to do. Don't you trust me? But actually, you're a team. You go into a relationship. There's a business element when you're running a family. It's practical stuff. You should be able to talk openly and relax in a relaxed way about how you would manage these things.
I am. Oh my gosh, you brought so many great points, Suzy. So when my wife and I were dating, and the first thing we did was we dated each other, and then the next phase was bringing the kids together. And
Mm.
one of the things, uh, our mantra was, if the kids didn't get along, we weren't going to maintain the relationship. And I know to a lot of people that is like looking at me with a third eye, but it was only fair to our kids that they weren't put in a situation that was going to be volatile or just not fair, because essentially we want everybody to have a say. Matter of fact, when we were looking for a house for all of us to live in, we brought the kids with us so they can have their opinions. Once we got to the point, Suzy, where my wife and I said, all right, let's move the relationship to the next step, my wife said to me, would you be open to going to marriage counseling? I'm like, heck yeah. I mean, I've been in therapy, not just on this podcast, but for years. And I said yes, because we both recognized that we didn't want to go through the same marriage that we just got out of. And
Mm.
so I totally agree with you, Suzy, that even before the marriage, have those tough conversations. And one of the things that we learned, well, I'm going to say fortunately, we learned a little bit later, was the financial piece, was the money, um, conversations. And we got to a point where we were close to getting divorced because of the financial piece, because we weren't honest with each other as far as having those tough conversations. And then
Mm.
finally we sat down and went through it and talked about it. And now we're at the point where Sunday nights, or even occasionally, it'll be just like, hey, can we talk about our finances? We have regular financial meetings talking about, all right, we know we have these bills coming out. uh, you know let's say my paycheck is coming this week. What can we take from that, putting savings? So you are 100% right, Suzy, that you need, and when I say you, I mean the couple should have those conversations before marriage. And I firmly believe in marriage counseling. And I heard somebody say this
Mm.
yesterday. I was on Clubhouse, And they're talking about, if you're not comfortable with your doctor, you can fire your doctor. If you're not happy with the marriage counselor you are with, you can fire them and find somebody else. So it is your life. Take control of your life. Take control of your finances.
Absolutely, and just because we think about it, certainly in the UK, it used to be particularly with Catholics, you don't just go and get married. You'd have the priest give a pretty strong pep talk on what's involved and the responsibilities. So there was a kind of intrinsic marriage counselling, sort of a pre-marriage counselling in place. But of course, as more and more people are not using the church in the benefits of the church, they are just doing their own thing, and the downside is they're not replacing that. So counseling at all times is valuable, but particularly just to sit down with someone who's a counselor or coach prior to a marriage and make sure that you can have those conversations, because one person may think, well, I'm not very good with the numbers, so I like to leave it to the other person. I cannot tell you how often I work with clients where they're about to get married. Ideally, it's early stages, so we can avoid a lot of nonsense. And I go, do you know how much? Do you know how much do they earn? Have they got any debts? And they're talking about their marriage partner, and they're going, no, they haven't. They don't really tell me that stuff, and that's not a great start. And that began in the marriage. That was way before the divorce. That lack of transparency and teamwork became an issue. So I agree with you. The more that people can get on top of that early on, just change the culture of what we expect from how couples can work in a relationship, it'll automatically translate into a lot less stress and bother should they at some point change the form of their family and become an extended family rather than a closed one.
Definitely. And, the thing where our world is right now is the culture of being able to just use a simple app. I mean, there there's so many
Mm.
different apps out there, and correct me if I'm wrong, you have an app to help people as
Mm.
well.
Absolutely, and it is, I guarantee, not a dating app, because a lot of divorce stuff is actually dating singles and divorce. I mean, it's like, oh my God, the last point you should be dating is when you're in a divorce situation. Get clear first, breathe, get your life back on track, and then you'll tend to invite in much better quality people into your life. But yeah, I have a best way to divorce app, which that was my lockdown thing, and I realized that there's nothing else like it, basically. And I thought that was crazy. You need to be able to pop on your phone and get key information from a voice that is not selling you a legal service or selling you any particular service at all, actually, but just going, here's information. This is what the lawyers don't tell you. Not because they're trying to hide things from you, but their knowledge is actually limited to the legal stuff, and there's not much law in family law, to be blunt. So I wanted to make sure people had access to information, to know the tools, what I call the tools in the peace toolbox, which they don't really understand mediation. Most of them have never heard of collaborative law. They don't realize arbitration is a great tool which you can use either individually or, even better, to unstick a mediation, for example, or a collaborative law process. So they don't understand the strategies and all these great tools available to them. So that's what I put together. It also has a support group. I sit on Zoom once a month and there to talk to people, because I think you do need to talk to people. You can't just get away with a chat room. I think it's important to connect with people and to have that space to be allowed to hope that you can make things better. So a lot of people I work with and support are in very difficult situations where they are likely to be in a bit of a war, or they've been dragged into court. I tend not to work that much with the fluffy ones, if you like, the peaceful, easy ones, because I give them lots of free resources and they're off. They can do that on their own. So I tend to see the ones where things are a bit more complex. And it's just so wonderful when I interview them in the secret divorce group, and they're saying how the the spouse who they really thought would, I thought, my God, that's going to be hard to get that person into mediation. But they've managed it because they've worked with Ruth, who is an expert in communicating with not controlling and coercive people. So she helps them learn how to work with that tricky person, and so that they can co-parent with them, and also put information to them in a way that will encourage them to take a more peaceful route, rather than just be triggered and feed into the fire of this unhealthy relationship. And it's just by talking to one person like that, that can transform their opportunity to go into mediation. Whereas on Facebook, in the divorce groups, or everyone's going, he's a narcissist, she's a narcissist, you can't use mediation, which is absolute rubbish. But that's what people are told. You can't, if you don't know what you're doing, you don't get a bit of help, and you get the right mediator, and you might need to use the breakout rooms. If somebody's not playing by the rules, but you don't have to just give up and go to court. So it's, the app I find very exciting, because I'm able to not just provide lots of resources, online little courses, got a very affordable ways for people to get information, so because I can't talk to everybody, but also to provide a support group, a secret divorce group in particular, where people get that ongoing support to stay on track. Because as I'm sure you know, it's one thing to give people good information, but the next thing you know, someone's told them something else and they've just gone off the rails. So maybe I'm a control freak, but for me, the secret divorce group is the way to just check in and go, right, I think you've done that now, right? Maybe you'd like to talk to a couple of mediators, and would you like me to introduce you to some, and just keeping them on track. And when they say that somebody said they should get a lawyer to send this letter, I go, well, apart from the cost, what are you trying to achieve with that? What's his reaction going to be? And they'll usually be very honest, and it's going to be a bad reaction. And I go, how does that help you? So it's just having somebody who's not emotionally involved and has nothing to gain from it getting messy. And I think that's key for me, because I don't benefit financially if people have a bad divorce. And unfortunately, in the industry, there's too many professionals who, at the end of the day, do benefit financially if it gets messy. And that's a tricky business model to be working against.
One of the things that popped in my head is one of my mom's sayings after I got divorced, and she was always saying that my former spouse was renting space in my head, and
Mm.
it was rough because I went through, a couple of years of going, all right, how did I screw up this weekend? How did I screw up this weekend with our son? And so,
Mm.
yeah, it's rough, getting divorced, and you I don't think you can really be prepared for something as traumatic as that, especially
No.
when you have kids involved. And um, you know, for example, I'll never forget the day um, we went to court, um, and it was 4 hours of just living hell. And
Mm.
the the part I still laugh about is because I was so nervous being in there, Susie. I
Mm.
drank a lot of water and coffee
Oh
sitting
no.
at the table, and so the judge, he had like 15 minutes to go through his ruling, and all I'm sitting there is going, I'm gonna sit here and wet my pants, and I'm trying to stay composed. I'm sitting there crying because in my mind he was getting ready to rule in my former wife's favor, but at the
Mm.
same time, like I said, I really wanted to go to the bathroom. And after he made his ruling saying uh, it was in my favor, where the judge says that that child is not leaving the state, I was
Yeah.
like so glad. Got up. And my wife was one of my witnesses, but she was outside the courtroom. I went up to her. I'm just crying and hugging her, and I go, I gotta go pee. And she's like, "What happened?" She didn't know what the ruling was until I came back. So the the point really is, you just are not prepared, and
Mm.
that's why I'm so fascinated with people in like you creating apps, because you can help, like you were saying earlier, when we started, saving yourself thousands of dollars. And
Yeah.
uh, even though this was pre-apps, I mean, if I had only listened again to friends and family of, you know as the word go, lawyering up, and
Mm.
I wouldn't have been in that situation. So I commend you, Suzy, for creating an app, and that's why I love having a lot of guests on this podcast who create apps, because they understand that that's our world now. Is let me just download an app and see what it can do to help not only myself but help my family.
And also it gives them just quick access and easy access. Once it's in there, once they've got it on the phone or they know how to get it on the desktop, it's to be able, when you're in a difficult space, to be able to pop into a group and go, this is how I'm feeling now. And sometimes people need to be talked down, and also a non-judgmental space. I always remember when I did my TEDx, and that was a live event, there was a lady in the audience that afterwards, she came up to me and she said, before your talk, she said, in the break, I was telling everyone around me how I wanted to a hire someone to basically kill my ex. I hate him so much, and she wasn't joking. And she's not the first person I met who has considered that. It was
Wow.
unusual to be speaking so
Oh,
openly in front of lawyers,
yeah.
but she was. And she said, when you did the TEDx, she said, then I cried, and she says she's not thinking about killing him anymore. But basically, it's about giving people the hope that that you can make this work. Because I think the biggest danger is that parents become desperate and they feel there is no hope and everything's against them, and then they can take actions, and sometimes the worst action they take is to shut down from the children because it's just too painful. Or
Uh-huh.
in some cases, they commit suicide. And of course, this is a big problem with dads who are denied access to their own children, which is one of the cruelest things that can happen to someone. I just cannot imagine how awful that is, because I've never had to be in that position. Yeah, I was grumpy because I had to leave them for the weekend and I hadn't chosen this and all of this, and then realized I was having a great time at the weekend and this co-parenting thing worked quite well after all. But I remember the resentment that I had. But to not see your children for weeks or months, and to have them used as in a war game is horrific. And this is, we're talking mental health issues. And I'm sure that in any
Mhm.
company in the land, in the States, in the UK, anywhere, there will be many employees who are dealing with these kind of mental health stresses, which become often serious issues. And the root cause is they haven't been empowered with key information that allows them to take responsibility, them to start to move things forwards, and to hold a space for peace. So my co-parenting relationship with my kid's dad became something I didn't believe was possible, but I allowed there to be the possibility. I never gave up on it. And when you give someone a good space to come into, which basically everyone benefits from, they, once they stop being difficult, a bit crazy, angry, resentful, they often will then start to play along because that's the best place to be. It's like if you reward your children for being good and you don't give them massive amount of attention for being bad, they will tend to be good more. It's just basic psychology, and I think it's something that unfortunately the family law system doesn't take account of. It almost rewards people for being their egos, for being angry and fighting. It's seen somehow as some like they were some kind of warrior, but actually really they are the loser and their children are often the loser. I'm not saying you don't ever use court. I would never say that, but it's a tool in the toolbox to be used sparsely and carefully for when you need it, which is blissfully not very often for most people.
I do have a question about family courts in the UK. But before I get there,
Mm.
you're talking about, you know, especially we men. Um, one of the thing um, I was on again. I was on a clubhouse event yesterday, and the topic was why men don't go to the doctor.
Mm.
And you know, along those lines, Susie, it's we men, not to totally generalize, but we men, you know, don't like to admit when we're depressed. We don't like to
Mm.
ask for help. We don't like to, reach out to other men and say, "Can we talk?" We internalize it and we feel that we can handle it, which is not true. And along those lines, when I got divorced in 2008, that first Christmas, I did hide. I
Mm.
couldn't face my son because I felt ashamed as a man, as a dad, as somebody who, whose marriage failed. And so I did hide. I actually went to go visit my mom. And,
Mm.
you know, the other things too, you know, at the time, my son's now 18. So and this is summertime, so we don't see a lot of him because he works and he works pretty much 7 days a week. And so
Mm.
the when I when before he was, let's say before 16, he had to rely on me to come and pick him up. So my
Mm.
former spouse and I had, like a lot of co-parenting, you had the neutral pick up drop off site, and
Mm.
especially on Sundays as I was driving uh, uh, back from the neutral site back home, I was in tears because it would be, another week of not
Mm.
seeing him. The only benefit I had was, during hockey season, he played hockey, so I was able to see him pretty much every weekend. But
Mm.
it's you do sit there, and I'll be the first to admit it. I would sit, my day job, I travel 100%, and I would be it'd be, a Sunday after having a great weekend with him, and either that next day I would be on a plane, and I would be a wreck, and
Mm.
because it would again be another week. And so my where I really want to empower more men, Susie, is to say, if you're hurting, ask for help. I mean,
Mm.
we dads try to think that we can do it all, and we can't. It's not possible. And so uh, part of the reason why I created this podcast years ago was to say to other men, hey, I've been there. I've
Mm.
been sitting in therapy. I've been, you know um, you know the one trying to down aspirin and just saying enough's enough. So I mean, part of what you were saying is it's so true, Susie, that we 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 don't. And when I say we again, I'm going to say the men. We don't understand what to do, and I again having the ability to go on an app and say to somebody in a private room, here's how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
That is so powerful. That is, and it's a safe space for them as well.
And accessing resource. So, like if they're English, they're in the UK. A lot of them have never heard of our national charity, Families Need Fathers, which is a fantastic charity which helps. It has a free helpline. Who knows, full of dads who have been through and are going through this trauma, and they just don't even know it's there. So that's in the app. They don't even have to come in and ask. They can find it under the parenting resources. I'm keen, incidentally, any US resources that you think I should add in there, please send them to me, because I would love to put them in, because it's not just for the UK, it's US. I've even got a specific resource for people in California in there at the moment. So it crosses continents, shall we say, and it's the same agony for a dad in London as it is a dad in New York who is in this situation. And I do have a workplace training that I have and would love to do more, have the opportunity to do more of. But it includes, the guy in the corner who won't come out anymore, who won't doesn't come down to the bar, and everyone just thinks he's being a bit grumpy. Just question that. Maybe there's something going on in his life, and it could be that he hasn't seen his children for 6 months and doesn't know how to talk about it. And by the time he goes to HR, it's a major problem. So I'm very keen not just to support people who are going through divorce to make better decisions, but also my message is really to everyone in society to have a greater awareness that there are better ways to do this than sending sending someone off to that Rottweiler who did your best friend's divorce, because that's a big problem. Your friends, you're lucky, you obviously had a really good support network, but a lot of people have loving friends and family who give them criminally bad advice, who encourage them, give them a number for a Rottweiler lawyer. And I had someone not long ago who had been recommended that, and I said, well, have a look at them first and see how did they do out of that divorce. Are they still able to have a conversation with their ex co-parent or with their current co-parent? Did their hair fall out and did they have to go on antidepressants because the divorce was so stressful? How much did it cost them? And I said, you'll probably find that the answers, those are the bits they're not telling you. Because invariably the person who's had the Rottweiler lawyer has actually suffered a huge amount, but they just don't know any other way. And they also want to justify that was the right thing to do. I had a wonderful interview with a girl who spoke about her parents who had a divorce in the UK with a very high profile lawyer. She's been in the media a lot. And she said this lawyer did an amazing job. She got my mum a fantastic settlement, and she did a great job. She said, however, my sister and I realised that we are unable to form healthy relationships with people because it was such a horrific and bitter divorce. And this is very common with children of divorce. It's not the fact their parents divorced, it's the fact that their model for having a relationship between two people who are supposed to love each other is so dysfunctional that's how we learn from our parents, we learn from our mentors, and it goes deep. So we're actually destroying the next generation's ability to have healthy, successful marriages when we divorce badly. Not because we're divorcing, but because we're doing it badly.
Yeah. I remember quite vividly the day my dad left. I remember the times where my mom would be on the phone, the two of them screaming at each other. And so, that was one of the things I did not want to repeat. I did not want to see or have my son see me leave. I didn't want to have those. And I'll admit, I would engage with my former spouse on some of those. I've gotten better in the years, Suzy. I was a horrible ex-husband. Horrible.
I remember having a lot of very shouty, sort of vomiting out my anger and distress down the phone. And then I realized it was better to do that with my friends. And I read a book by Chuck Spezzano. It was a pivotal moment in my life. I read this short little book, and it's called Happiness is the Best Revenge. And it was the title that drew me to it, I'll be honest. And because I did feel very aggrieved at the time. And I read this little book, and it said there's something called Jewish mother syndrome, which is a sort of nickname for you never call me, you never visit, and I'm going to make you feel guilty and guilty and guilty. And although that's done in a jokey way, in reality, it said if someone makes you feel guilty all the time, or you make them feel guilty all the time, they will hate you. And I remember thinking, I don't want my children's father to hate me. That's not going to work well for us. They're still really little. We've got a long way to go with this co-parenting thing. That's not what I want. And I realized that the more I made him feel bad, the more he was going to hate me. And that was not the outcome I wanted. And it was a pivotal moment. I remember it like it was yesterday. And and those are the sort of epiphanies that you need to have on the journey as you find your way along. We all start off messing up because we're human, but hopefully we get enough help along the way to go, actually, no, this isn't helping me be the happy co-parent that I want to be.
I want to tie these two together. I want if you can, give us your opinion about family courts in the UK. And I bring this up because on your divorce TV show, you had one of my past guests, Carl T. Roberts, and I know he went through a horrible 10 years uh, of going through family courts. Here in the United States, I mean, they have a very, very bad reputation. Matter of fact, things about maybe a month ago where there was a judge who was getting money underneath the table from these family lawyers to help, win cases. So I don't know what
Wow.
it's like in the UK as far as family courts.
That's absolutely shocking.
Not
I'm,
really, not
I,
really here in the United States, honestly.
That's terrifying. I would like to believe that would be actually very difficult to do in our system and doesn't happen, but it kind of doesn't need to, because ultimately the system itself is toxic. It's toxic because it's designed by people who are not understanding that the divorce process is not simply there's this administrative bit where you've got to end the contract of marriage, because that's what you're doing. There's these human beings involved. So one of the things that we still don't have here, I know you've got it in California. Have you got a no fault divorce in Colorado?
I don't know.
Because they're supposed to bring it in here finally in the autumn, and then apparently because of COVID and other problems, it's going to be next spring. But it's the very. I literally was sitting with someone today, going, right, with the petition, because you haven't been separated for 2 years. Well, how can you afford financially to separate for 2 years when you haven't sorted out the finances yet, which you need to do through the divorce, right? So that's a big hurdle. So you want to the easiest thing is to go for unreasonable behaviour, because that's the simplest way to do it. So you then have to work out, how can you say horrible things about them that the court will go, oh, their marriage is definitely broken down, without making them so angry and upset when they read it. And it's like a game you have to play. And it is, to me, it's like a fantastic example of how ridiculous and inhuman in many ways the whole process is. So the law is trying to control the ending of a contract where actually the legal part is very small. And my personal belief is we should have workshops, we should have retreats where you go and learn how to be married and also how to divorce, how to become co-parents, learn how to do these things and stay out of the system. Because the toxicity of the family law system is for the fact, it's the very fact, it's not just the costs, it's the insanity of it. So it's a bit like, how like trading isn't so much science, it's people's emotions. So a stock will go up because people have confidence in it. It's a kind of a game of the emotions. When the same way in a family court, you'll have someone they'll drag the other person into court, even though there's much better options, because of their emotions, because of their ego, because of their anger, because they think the judge is actually interested in what he did or she did, when of course they don't care. It's irrelevant. Absolutely irrelevant. The court just want you out of there as quickly as possible because they're completely overloaded. And it's a mythical game that people play using this toxic system that they think is there as some form of justice. But as I explained to a lady today, forget justice, forget fairness. It doesn't matter that you pretty much paid for the house and brought in all the income, and he hasn't hardly given anything. You have created a home for your children. He's been a good dad. That bit's done now. Let's look at what's going to happen next. But what happens in the court system is people bring all the past and the baggage, even though it's completely irrelevant, and they're given a platform to throw it at each other, even though ultimately it has really no bearing on the judge at all. And they'll have barristers in to a free £4,000 a pop to give to stand up and interrogate the other person, but it's not like anyone's committed a crime. And often I'll say, what was the legal point they were arguing? And it's cost you £4,000. What was the legal point? And they'll go, well, there wasn't one really. But
Exactly.
so why did you get a barrister? Because I was scared that I wouldn't do it well enough, and they were frightened, and they wanted to have someone there to prove that their wife had lied about them. But actually, there was no evidence anyway, so they didn't need the barrister. You see what I mean? So it's kind of a bizarre game that people get sucked into, because the brand of family law is very powerful. It says we are the gatekeepers. We know how this mystical system works, and if you let us take you through it, you'll come out better off. That's the myth. And there are some occasions where a good Rottweiler lawyer is worth their weight in gold. Not deny
Yeah.
it. If your parent is about to run off out of state or a different country with your child, then you definitely want to come down on them hard and make sure that doesn't happen. But for the vast majority of the time, your weapons, your armory, you're going in with machine guns, harming everybody, when actually you do need to have a different choice of weapon. It's going to be far more useful to you and more powerful ultimately.
Well, they need peace as their weapon.
They do. They don't, but they know how to wield it. There's an
Yeah.
art to it.
So you and I met because you have, oh my gosh, the production value of your divorce TV show is just, I- it's like watching. I'm trying to make
Fox
this.
News. Fox News, maybe.
No, 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 ew, evil. It's just fantastic, and so impressed. Being a guest on your divorce TV show. How did that come about? And do you pretty much put that all together by yourself?
Yes, it's a Suzy Miller production. That was another gift from COVID, and although I was very busy throughout, because I create what income I can through what I do, and there's that nobody put me on furlough, but at the same time, I had that space. My daughter was home. Was it, and it was, and I needed that emotional, psychological confidence to dive into the tech, because it is, it's it's a nightmare working
Yeah.
out which one to use, and it changes all the time. And every time I do it, there's some other little thing. It's like, oh god, I gotta remember that next time. And I realized by doing it every week, I want to get good at this. I want to have these guests on. I want to share. It's it's brilliant having you on, and please come on again. You've got the link. Just go and put yourself in there, because having these conversations, as you do with these podcasts, is so valuable. And why should we just be talking together when we can't be sharing it with a wider audience? And also, I have two audiences. One of the people who I hope for gaining some good insight and ideas and inspiration for better ways to deal with their co-parenting and their divorce, but also a professional audience, because when I used to do my live divorce fairs, I realized that many of the professionals didn't really know what each other did. So how could they work collaboratively? So that's how I kind of grew to become the architect, if you like, the travel guide through divorce. So I know what everybody does, and I can talk to someone and suggest the appropriate people for them to talk to and what order. So don't go and see the mediator if you haven't worked out what your financial split is yet. And they think that's the mediator's job or the lawyer's job. And I go, no, it's your life, your future. Why don't you sit with a really nice financial planner, and they can help you work it out? And it sounds so obvious, but nobody's doing that. Not really. And so I'll be honest that the divorce TV show and the app, Best Way to Divorce app, really are me following my own instinct that until somebody else steps up and does this, this is my job. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. It's not the only thing I do, but I would feel, I don't know, bad if I just stopped. Because I wouldn't be, I just couldn't, It's like you see an old lady crossing the road and she can't see and a car's coming. You kind of go and try and stop the traffic. That's all I'm really trying to do with this, is help stop people throwing themselves over a cliff and making a mess of things when it's not necessary.
I to the audience, I am so impressed. I'm like, wow, being able to switch, you have your camera and then your guest and then you have another guest come in. It's like it is really like watching a real news TV program. And because of me being on your show, um, hopefully soon I can have Mr. Divorce Coach Tom Nash on my podcast,
Yeah, he's
and
great. Yes.
he is awesome. And the funny thing was, I can't remember the order. I don't know if I went first or he went first, but during one of our two segments, he reached out to me through LinkedIn. I'm like, oh, dude, I wanted to reach out to you first. And he's like, you're too slow. So the great, again, and this is why I loved your program, is because your guests are building a network within themselves to be able to
Yeah.
help others. And that's why I was like so honored to be on your program.
And I'm very keen. And an interesting thing is, I've always, right from the beginning, it costs no money to be a guest. I've said to mediators, collaborative lawyers, dispute resolution professionals, please come and share what you do. And what I say to the British mediators a lot is, Americans, come on. Where are you?
Yes, we
Why
do.
aren't you coming on? And the Americans much, much better at stepping up and saying, here we are, this is what we do, and we're proud of it. In England, it's like the mediators are sitting in the corner waiting for the lawyers to refer to them. And I'm going, no, 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 no. We're the peacemakers. We need to be at the new gatekeepers to divorce. People need information and inspiration, and they need to know that the lawyers, what they use the lawyers for, and they're great, but they shouldn't be the main people in charge of this. And the business model, which I find interesting because that has a massive play on how this toxic system continues to play out, is even when in the UK they made it that you shouldn't go to court without at least finding out what mediation is. You have what's called a mediation information assessment meeting. Unfortunately, it's so late in the process that people are not hearing always the benefits, and they're also not always delivered particularly well either. So it's not being sold as well as it should, this peace thing. But what you've got is people wanting yeah, it's about making sure that I really want the professionals to step up and speak out and not just sit there going, well, we have to be nice to the lawyers because that's where we get our referrals. And my argument is, to a mediator I spoke to actually just yesterday, the trouble is that both you and I, with work I do too, we're taking money away from them because we're giving people a cheaper way to do this. So that's not a good model. So my plea to the peacemakers out there, the mediators, the collaborative lawyers, is step up, put yourself up front, be the main initial contact when people come for information. And if you want some help with doing that, come and talk to me, because I can give them lots of resources that you can share with them, and just make the lawyers be wonderful as though they are in their place in the queue of who you should be talking to when you're finding out the best way to divorce.
Before I give you the last question, Suzy, I have to ask: do you ever sleep? Because you have the divorce TV show, you've created this app, you're also writing scripts. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, do you sleep? Do you enjoy sleeping? Is it just I don't need it.
I I I love my sleep, but I'll be honest, I don't do much else. I'm very. My children are older now, thank goodness. So they do their own thing, and I'm lucky to. I just love being a mum. And but we have the odd coffee together, or I tell them what's happening, or if I've had a screenplay that's done well in a competition, or I'm doing a master's degree. I love that. But that obviously you can guess that the subject matter of what I'm writing is actually taking a lot of these situations which are very traumatic, really. And for me, it's my therapy, is to transform it into drama, and to find ways that are non-preachy, that to get it's another way to get the same messages out there. It just happens to be something I love to do, and it's something I should have started doing a long time ago. But again, another gift from lockdown. I just thought life's too short. I need to get on with this. But yeah, it is a lot. And one of the lessons that I'm constantly learning is that I need to build in a infrastructure so it doesn't rely on me. So I'm very consciously, the app allows people to get lots of stuff without me physically having to send them to a link. So that's one of the bits of thinking behind that. The other one is that the model that I have for the online workshops, which I'm looking really keen to run some in California and then other states as well, is once that's working, everyone can see brilliant way to get new clients who are divorcing, with a focus on it being more peaceful, more intelligent. Then I don't physically have to be the one who runs all of those. I can train someone up to hold that space. So I'm thinking all the time about how I can get more sleep.
I forgot where I was going to go. Other than LinkedIn, how else can the audience get a hold of you, Suzy?
The best way is best way to divorce. They will the best way to divorce.co.uk will take them to, it's actually an international site, but that's the easiest one to remember, best way to divorce.co.uk. Best way to divorce.online takes them to the app. And the best way really is go into the app. The app's got recordings of divorce TV shows, got a podcast version, it's got resources, and they can contact me through the Best Way to Divorce.online app. And that's UK, USA. I speak some French, but really it's mainly English speaking, with a similar kind of divorce system. That 99% of what I do is relevant to all of that.
Bonjour, mon ami. Comment allez-vous?
Très bien, merci.
Merci. There it is. That's about it. Years of French, and that's the only thing I can remember. So here's the last question, Suzy. And again, I am so grateful that I was able to sort of turn the tables. I was honored to be on your show. You come on here as a podcaster yourself, as a TV host. Here we go. Last question. If you could step into my shoes, what would you have asked that I did not ask? If you could step into my shoes, what would you have asked that I did not ask?
You asked so many good questions. That is quite a tricky one. I think it would be, why do you do this?
Suzy, why do you do this?
For the children.
Ah.
And I'm honest with that with parents. And I care about how this is affecting you and where you're going to end up, and I have compassion. But I'm not doing this for you and your spouse. We're all doing this for your children, because children belong to everybody. And it's the children, the impact on them, that has not just an effect on them, but on society as a whole. It's massive.
I would like to say something in French other than au revoir.
That'll do.